Welcome back. Thanks for tuning in again. I'm Brian Fong, and today we're here with part 2 of the interview with Mario Butler. If you haven't watched part 1, go back, watch part 1. That sounds like force. That sounds like, go back now! Oh. You didn't watch part 1? Oh, all right. Today we'll be delving more into his spiritual life. Sit back, enjoy.
How did you handle peer pressure when people were trying to knock you off task constantly? How was that?
I'll tell you this, Brian, and this will be a golden nugget for you, as Coach Mike likes to call them. I always tell people there's nothing more powerful than a made-up mind. And as I get older and mature more, I find that out more and more, because the thing about peer pressure, Brian, if you wait until that situation to decide what you're going to do, it's already too late. Before that situation ever arises or presents itself, you have to already have your mind made up. This is what I'm going to do, this is who I am, and this is not what I'm going to do, and this is not who I am. And so the most important thing when it comes to peer pressure is to go ahead and decide, what am I going to do and what am I not going to do? And if you're a believer and your faith is in Jesus Christ, then you're gonna look to his word and what his word says to decide what you're going to do.
Let's talk about the time when Laura Bush was here. We both got a chance to experience that. Can you just touch on that real quick?
That was actually one of my first team focus camps when First Lady Laura Bush came, and that was amazing. That was almost like a surreal experience. Even the footwork that went into it leading up, seeing the Secret Service guys around scouting the premises and getting things prepared, and you talk about foreshadowing, and you talk about God using team focus to instill nuggets and to prepare young men for purpose. I would end up going and pursuing my master's in public administration later on, and doing several things in public service. And I very strongly believe those type of things had a strong footprint on that.
How was discipline for you in team focus? How tough were the people on you? How did this affect you?
Team focus definitely introduced me to structure. As Darius mentioned earlier, we'd have long days. We start early, we finish late, and we'd be back up the next day early. And I look at it now, my life has been filled with a lot of long days, but team focus was preparing me for that early. And I knew that I could handle it because I'd already been exposed to it.
Those long days, kind of when it came to life, when it was time for me to go to work and it was time for me to get it, it influenced me. Working hard is what successful people do best. And I look back at it, and a lot of those, speakers, a lot of those, mentors we had, different individuals, if you look back at it, we were privileged. We were privileged and privy to a lot of different people, a lot of different conversations that a lot of kids our age, were. So when it came to work, it was kind of downhill there. Working hard is what we did. So
I agree on what Darius said 100%. And successful people do get hard-earned work done, and they get really good stuff for that. Can you touch on that?
Yes, I believe team focus was a huge part in instilling a work ethic in me, because I take a lot of pride in being, the first one to the gym or the weight room, whatever it is, and being the last one to leave. And I believe that's a big part that's allowed me to get where I am, and team focus definitely helped to instill that. I never was taught that things would be handed to you. I was taught that, you seek first the kingdom of God and know that he has a plan for you. And as you put the work in and you follow him, he will add the rest to you.
It's funny you said that, Mario. I can distinctly remember Pastor Ray Dempsey. Pastor Ray is a firm guy, loving guy, best guy you ever want to know. He would tell us all the time, he would say, do what's right. Who you are when no one's watching, that's who you really is. That's you. So I always do what's right. So I can agree with you 100%.
Who is a speaker that you remember, a speaker that made an impact on your life and actually affected you? What did they get through to you?
Yes, I can remember Coach Mike, he'd always tell this story of Henry Tootin and Steve Israel. And they went to the University of Pittsburgh, and Henry Tootin, he was the real standout, went on to get drafted by the Chicago Bears. and he had a buddy, Steve Israel, who would also go on to play in the NFL as well. And he would say how you would always see these two together. They were hand and foot. If you saw Steve, you saw Henry. If you saw Henry, you saw Steve. And I can remember him talking about the two different paths they took. Steve, he was a hard worker. He was a guy who always had great character, tried to do the right things, went on to have a successful career in the NFL and later in banking. And then Henry Tootin, who was a standout All-American guy, ended up following the wrong crowd, making a bad decision that landed him in jail. And I can remember when Coach told these stories, it seemed like, these people that I was like, man, we'll never get to meet Henry. We'll never get to hear his story. But then one year, Henry Tootin got out of prison and he was able to come speak to us, and I got the chance to meet him. And I've met a lot of people, Brian, and I've never felt starstruck. But when I met Henry Tootin, it was like this feeling of me being starstruck and taken aback, because he was this person I heard about for years, and then finally I got to meet him and to hear the wisdom he learned through experience. So that's one of my coolest team focus memories. How old are you now, Brian?
I'm 14 years old.
You're 14 years old. What grade does that put you in?
I'm actually getting put into the 9th grade.
So you're going into high school. You've been in middle school. You've had some success there, and now you're entering into high school. And so what I want to give you the opportunity to do now, is there any questions you'd like to ask Darius or myself? Because we know there are some things you maybe didn't face in middle school that you're going to be faced with in high school. Is there anything you'd like to ask us?
Yes, I would like to ask you a question. What was it like in high school for you? Were there any tough times that you had to go through?
Wow, Brian, I'm so glad you asked, because in high school, to be honest with you, I was very lukewarm in my faith. I went to a Christian school, but I was very lukewarm. I was 1 foot in and 1 foot out. And there were times where I could see people that were hurting, that needed Jesus, because I gave my life to him when I was 8 years old at a summer Bible camp. I felt conviction that I needed to give my life to Jesus, and I did. But that didn't mean I was always walking with him, but I knew him, and I had the Holy Spirit living inside of me. And there'd be times, Brian, I'd see someone hurting, and I want to share with them something that was really impressed in my spirit. But because of the way I lived my life, it altered my witness. And so because of the way I was living, it was hard for them to receive what the Holy Spirit wanted to speak through me. And so I can remember my freshman year in college, I made the decision to be baptized. And for me, that was my public display of faith, saying, I'm done being lukewarm. From this day forward, Jesus, I'm going to be on fire for you. And I thank God that he redeemed the time. The opportunities I missed in high school, I was able to get again in college, and able to lead many of my friends to faith in Jesus. And so, Brian, one thing I would encourage you with is, as you have this summer and this time, really take time to think about, who are you going to be? What type of impact are you going to make on that high school campus? Because you're going to come in contact with people who face abuse at home. You're gonna face people who are struggling with drugs and alcohol, even in high school. There's so many temptations and different things coming at them. And you have to decide, am I going to try to fit in, or am I going to stand out? Because the truth of the matter is, Brian, God has called you to stand out. You're different. Whether you like it or not, his hand is on you. His light is on you. And so you have to make the decision now as a young man to say, okay, am I gonna use these years to fit in and try to be cool with people I may not even talk to in 10 years? Or am I gonna use this time to be influential and allow God to use my life, even in the 9th grade? So that's the challenge I have for you, Brian.
Thank you. I have a question for Darius also. So what was it like for you in high school? Did you ever get picked on or bullied? Did you ever have a time where you were popular? Was school ever easy for you?
It's funny, Brian. That's a touchy subject. But for me, school was always an uphill battle. For me, it was always a fight to get work done. It was always a struggle. Only thing came easy to me was lunch and football. And I could just be completely honest with you on that. I can honestly tell you I did not do what I was supposed to do in high school. I was a popular kid that played football, that was a successful football player, but when it came to class, I struggled. And it's one of my biggest regrets to this day. If I look back at it, I would have never picked up a football. I'd have picked up a pen and a notebook and a test book. But you live, you learn. In life, you fall. You make mistakes, but the catch is to fall forward. Because if you can fall forward and look back, you're a little bit farther ahead than where you were. Bought sense is the best kind. For me, I was 22 years old when I bought my sense, and I figured it out, and I got to where Mario were, what he was talking about. But in life, I would just say, you know what's right, and where's Pastor Ray, do what's right. What do you see yourself doing in high school? What sports do you see yourself playing? I know you're a leader. You're set aside. So we expect great things from you. But what exactly do you expect from yourself?
Well, Darius, I expect myself to be a successful person. I expect myself to be the top of my class, to be on A honor roll. I want to be a jock as well as a nerd. I want to be very popular in basketball as well as in the NBA one day. And I want to be a pro just like Mario is also. I look up to him.
Okay. Well, one thing for sure, whether it's pro basketball, whether it's an attorney, whether it's a brain surgeon, or whether you cure the coronavirus, we expect great things from you, Brian. And I know it's going to happen. I just know it.
How was basketball like for you? How was it like for you in the pro league in foreign countries, like South America?
Yeah, my rookie season was in South America and Argentina, Brian, and they speak Spanish. And I wasn't fluent in Spanish when I first got there, and so there was a language barrier. But one thing I found out is that a work ethic is something that will speak across different languages. So we may not have been able to understand each other's words, but we can understand one another's actions. And I would always be the first one in the gym to shoot and get ready for practice. And then afterwards, I'd always stay later to shoot. And before long, I began to notice on the other half of the court, my teammates began to stay after and shoot. And so that's one thing that Team Focus taught me is that, leadership speaks. It's not just about what you say. There's an old adage that says, words are cheap. And so ultimately it's what we do that people will see. And if we're leaders, it's something that they can follow.
You've played a lot of basketball across a lot of different teams and a lot of different platforms. You didn't always start. Can you just talk to the guys out there about, adversity? You're not going to always be the best guy on the team. You're not going to always be the tallest guy on the team. You're not going to be the shortest guy on the team. So just touch on adversity because you always had a great attitude. Every time I've seen you throughout life, you've always kept that positive attitude. So can you just touch on that real quick?
Yeah, Darius, I'm going to look into the camera where the guys can look me in my eyes and hear what I'm saying on this. When I was in college, I didn't always start. I had some talent, I could play, I had potential, but I didn't always start. But because I was active in my faith, I began to seek God on the situation to try to get a heavenly perspective rather than just an earthly one. Because it was clear in the natural and the earthly sense, I wasn't playing. But I believe that God had something he wanted to teach me through that. Because in the Bible, I saw different people like Joseph face adversity and overcome it. I saw people like Moses and David face adversity in their lives and overcome it and be better for it. And so what I learned that God was trying to teach me was humility. And so rather than sulking on the bench, I learned how to become the greatest teammate and to cheer my teammates on and to help them grow in their faith off the court, which then helped them to have greater focus on the court. And now that I've been able to, become a starter and achieve some success, I'm thankful for those experiences because now I don't look down on the guy on the bench. I'm speaking life into him, telling him stick with it, keep working, be ready when your time comes. And if I hadn't gone through those painful times of sitting on the bench, and turning that into becoming the best teammate, I wouldn't have that appreciation that I have now and I wouldn't have the gratitude that I have now. So use it as an opportunity. It's not just about your game on the court or on the field or in the office, in the business setting. It's about who you are as a person. Are you someone who's just all about you? Are you selfish or are you a selfless team player? Because I want the team player on my squad.
Okay, so what is important to you how do you think about a team? What do you think of them being? What is your interpretation of how a team would actually act to each other?
Yes, Brian, one of the first teams I was introduced when I was 8 years old was Team Focus. And I can always remember Coach Mike would talk about how the team extends to your home. you and your mom, you and your grandmother, you and your guardian, whoever that may be, he would always say that you all are a team. And now that I'm married, I've entered into one of the greatest teams, because even on the greatest pro team or college team I played on, those don't have the eternal stakes that the team I'm now on does. And that's a team of marriage, because that's a covenant not only between my wife and I, but with God as well. And there are times where I can always hear the words of Coach Mike saying, you are on a team at home. And so if my wife cooks dinner, guess what? I want to wash the dishes. And you know, that goes from small things to big things. You're a team. It's not one person calling all the shots. You have to come together and do things. And that's something that Team Focus helped to instill in me at an early age.